Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast, episode 23. I'm Randy with my buddy Danny.
Hey, Randy.
Hey, Danny. Today's episode, we are talking about starting over and new beginnings.
Oh, new beginnings.
Not old beginnings.
Those are good. Yeah, old beginnings are bad. We want new beginnings, not the same old shit.
Beginnings. Now, why are we talking about starting over and new beginnings?
Well, I don't know. I think it's important, right? Because I think, in my own life, I've been thinking a lot about this. I think it's important. We want to make life the best that it can be, right? And a lot of times I think, we have to kind of get rid of the old in order to really create something better and something new. You see this in a lot of philosophies. The idea, like Nietzsche talks about it, like self-overcoming. And, the idea is like kind of destroying your old self in a sense, right? In order to create the new self, you have to go beyond it. You have to kind of get rid of all the past crap, because that past crap or those old ideas are going to keep you in the same state of mind, the same life, basically, right? So in order to change, you need something new.
Yeah. Yeah, you are who you are because of everything you do and all your habits.
Right? So, we are that way, so.
Yeah, so you almost need to empty your cup. Like I think there's a Zen or a Taoist parable where in order to taste the tea, you need to first empty your cup. Because otherwise you're not going to be able to taste the new tea.
I like that. Yeah, you have all the old stuff in there, right? It's gonna either you're not gonna taste anything new because you can't fit it, or it's gonna distort the flavor of the new tea, right? It's gonna cause it to taste like the old tea.
Yeah. And so talking about starting over, new beginnings is great because the world's changed a lot. Changing with change is the only way to remain changeless.
It is true, right? You have to keep with the change. It's funny, too. I think, like, at our age, too, we've seen the world change so much just in our own lifetimes. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. Like, with technology and everything and just these shifts in how everything is done. And I think it's pretty amazing. But it also kind of does make you think about change and new beginnings because there's more possibility now than ever. I think, right? There's more opportunity. And even though sometimes it seems like there's less, there is more, I think. It just depends on how you look at it and what you're willing to do.
Yeah, I always think, so like, we've seen so much change in our lifetimes. I just think about video game systems, like it started out with Atari and Nintendo and Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64. But then I think back about these people who were probably born 100 years ago or something like that. And they were used to getting a newspaper like once a day. And then all of a sudden the radio was invented. And they're like, what is this change? How could you do this? So, news 2 times a day? What is this world coming to? And now we see what we have nowadays.
24/7, yeah. Could you imagine that? That would be horrible. It's funny though, I read something a while ago that said, with every new invention of information exchange and getting information out there, so like the printing press, the possibility of like newspapers, of radio, of television, there was always this concern that it was too much, too fast. You think of it's funny when you think about it, it's almost comical, right? Like TV back in whenever it came out, 50s or whatever, as being too fast. Like, the information's too quick. Like, it was still really slow in comparison,
Yep.
Now it's instant and everywhere.
Or like when you had horses and the automobile came out. Yeah. What is that nonsense? That's never going to last.
I can get to the town in 3 minutes? What? Yeah. It's funny, too, because when you think about the changes with technology and information, too, I think there is part of that too is we have access to so much now information that it can almost be overwhelming too in a way.
Yeah.
Like, I think I was thinking about this the other day, you back in the day, and I'm just imagining here like 100 years ago or maybe 200 years ago or something, you lived probably in a town, you probably didn't travel that much because it took too long. So your experience with how people live their lives was minimal. So that the possibilities of what you could do seem limited, right? Because you only had so many examples around you of people doing stuff. You might have somebody farming or whatever, right? Now it's like you can go online, you can see all these examples, you see it on TV, there's all these things you could do, and I think sometimes that's actually like, what do they call it? It's like decision paralysis or something?
Oh, yeah, analysis paralysis.
Yeah, where you have so many options that you actually cripple yourself, right? You don't know how to decide, you don't even know what to choose. So if we're talking about starting over and new beginnings, is it about decision making? Is that the biggest part of it, do you think? Or is it about understanding what we can do? What do you think?
Well, I like what you talk about with the analysis paralysis, because literally our options are unlimited nowadays. But the thing is, you have to choose something. And if you don't choose something, that's still a choice. So on the one hand, we have analysis paralysis from just having too many choices. On the other hand, there's the past, which kind of weighs us down. So there's almost this like slavery mentality that weighs us down. Like I remember for a long time, I felt limited in terms of what I could do with my future because I had student debt. And like, I was at such a young age when I incurred it that it was just, I didn't even question going into debt for education.
No, it's always there. Everybody else was doing it, right?
Exactly.
What we were supposed to do.
Yeah, it was the biggest gateway drug. Worse than marijuana is student debt.
It is.
And so like, because of that, I felt this weight on my shoulders that kind of dictated what I could do in my life because I had this monthly payment that I had to make no matter what. I couldn't take some months off. I couldn't do that. And so I think that on one hand, this unlimited opportunity is there, but on the other hand, you have all of your past and all of these burdens and all of this baggage that you're carrying with you that and these habits you've developed because of that are also making it difficult for you to have a new beginning.
Well, they also limit your choice, right?
A new start.
Yeah, right? A new start. There we go. Yeah. You know, it's funny, Jose Ortega, Spanish philosopher, he talks about life programs or life projects. And he says, you know, the only thing that limits our life projects or our life programs, what we imagine we could be and then trying to make that happen, is essentially our past and our circumstances. Those are two things that, you know, you have to work within basically, right? You can't change them, they're part of it. And he said, you know, essentially with each new life program that you create, you have the old one that you essentially use as a starting point to modify, change. Mm-hmm. And I like what you said too, because about student loan debt or something like that, that can feel like a huge weight and burden that limits choice because you're so worried about, say, paying that debt every month, making that payment. And bills are like that, right? You're worried about making those payments that you're afraid to take chances because if I take a chance and I don't have my steady check, I won't be able to make these payments. I'll go into severe debt. Something else worse will happen. So you feel trapped by all of this, right? And it feels like you can't make a new start or a new beginning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of making a new start, you know, there's all these sayings like you never step in the same river twice and every day is a new beginning and all of this, and I think that they all do have their place because really every day is a new beginning, but we kind of step into the new day with the baggage of the past.
We do, right?
The habits of the past.
Yeah.
And that severely limits us. And so how does one go about with these difficulties, with this baggage, and with, you know, the limitation of their own vision? How does one go about creating a new start?
You know, I think it's interesting, right? Because I think, you know, one of the things we have to do is we have to be willing to imagine the life that we want to live and work towards it, because that's critical, right? And you said it earlier. If we don't have focus, if we don't have some goal that we're working towards, we're not gonna get there. Mm-hmm. You know, we said it a million times, right? Vague goals get vague outcomes, right? Or vague consequences or whatever. So you do need something that you're working towards. You need something to focus on. But the problem also is I think you have to figure out what that is. And I think for a lot of us that can be the scary part is, you know, well, if I choose this, that's the new path, but what if I don't like it? And I think this is one of the things a lot of people struggle with. We need to kind of really do some self-reflection, think about what is it that I really do like? What are the things that I really, you know, am interested in, something I could see myself doing, and then start trying things. And I think this is crucial. You do kind of need a trial period where you're kind of taking chances, trying things, because you'll develop new skills. You'll see some new possibilities open up before you with all those new skills and things that you're doing. And that will give you some insight into what you might do. And one of those things that you attempt might be something that you do take forward, right? I mean, you know, it just depends on what you're, you know, I guess what you're trying out. But I think that's one of the difficulties, right? We need to kind of have an idea of what we want, and that's the hard part for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head there where you said kind of sitting down to figure out what it is that you want. Because basically, until you do that, you're just living in past patterns. Like, you're living in old habits. And these old habits came because at one point you had a direction you wanted to go and you built up the habits in order to take you in that direction. But now if you're just going in that direction and that's not the direction you want to go, it really is up to you to actually change that direction. But the first thing you have to do before implementing that change is figuring out what that change is that you want. And I really can't emphasize enough the importance of writing it down.
Yeah.
So we talked about this before, that just writing down something, a goal, increases your chance of accomplishing it by 40%.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also writing it down helps you kind of figure through all these things that you want to do, because it can take a while. Like, I know at low points in my life, I haven't even been able to see like any possibility whatsoever. But then the more I focus on it, the more effort I put into it, it's iteration after iteration. It's like, well, what could make me happy? Okay, let's start going in that direction. And then once I get there, okay, now I can see a little bit further, and now I can see a little bit more clearly. And eventually, step by step by step, you can redefine this vision. And then once you have this clearly defined vision that you can look at every single day and say, this is where I'm going, then you break that down step by step and figure out, how do I get there?
And you start working towards it. I like that too, the way you describe that, because, you know, it is like, it's almost like you can't see. It really does feel like that sometimes. And I mean, I know in my worst, it does. It feels like nothing's going to work. You're stuck in these sort of patterns. You're stuck in these habits, and nothing's going to change. You have no way to go forward. And you're right, you know, you have to figure out a way, and you have to do it. I mean, we've said that before, but it's crucial. I think, you know, we were talking about this before we started the episode today. You know, you see so much blame and victimization now of people who, I get it too, right? You're stuck, you feel like you don't have any options, and it's easier to blame the world, to blame the government, to blame other people, to blame circumstances for your situation than to take responsibility, because at least it gives you an out. But the fact of the matter is blaming doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't change things. It doesn't make things better. It might make you feel better temporarily, but you'll feel a lot worse later when you've done nothing. And I think that's the really crucial thing to keep in mind, right? You have to do something to work towards it. And like you said, I think, you know, I like the way you described it too. Is kind of like things get clearer over time. The more we try things, the more we kind of see what is possible, even that we can do something. I think, you know, that should be stressed. Even just figuring out that, yeah, I can do something. I can accomplish a goal I set myself. I can do something different. You realize, hey, maybe it is possible that I could do whatever I want. There is no limitation on me.
Yeah, and one of the really important things to remember is that if it is really dark for you, like if you're not able to see clearly, just remember that it's darkest before dawn. Like, those times when you're about to have the most significant breakthroughs in your life, they happen right after the times of the hardest struggle, the darkest visions, all of that stuff you have to struggle through. It's going to completely open up your life. Like, I remember this, Will Smith tells a story about the first time he went skydiving, how he was out with a bunch of friends and they were all, you know, having a good time drinking, and somebody's like, let's go skydiving tomorrow. So being all macho men, they're like, yeah, skydiving, yeah. And so he got home, he couldn't sleep that night because he was terrified about skydiving. And you know, he's driving there with all his buddies in the back of the van. They're all silent. They're all like got that cold sweat dripping down their forehead, and nobody's gonna admit to not wanting to do it because they're all macho men. So they're like, yeah, skydiving, let's do this. And meanwhile, they're all terrified. And then they get to the airfield. They get on the plane, and they're all just like shaking, tremoring because it's terrifying. The door opens, the light's red. Eventually, it switches to green. It's time to go. He's about to absolutely lose it, and then the guy takes him out of the plane and he starts falling, and all of a sudden, after all this terror, after all this misery, he has the most beautiful transcendent experience of his life.
Yeah,
skydiving.
It makes sense. Yeah,
and that's like oftentimes what it is, where like your life's greatest victories exist on the other side of fear.
Well, you know, it's funny, you see that a lot in philosophy too, this idea that, you know, we have to get through these difficult times. Those struggles, they define us. They help us realize who we are, what we're capable of. And I think you're right too. It's funny, but at the darkest times, if we do have that mentality that we can change things, we can start over, we can have a new beginning, we will figure out what we want at those darkest times, because they're the times that we're also most desperate in a sense, right? It's the times we're looking for what will work, what will make it happen. And then just starting something. But you mentioned it before too. I think the one thing that I think gets a lot of people, and it's gotten me a lot of times too, and made me kind of darken my mood a lot, is, you know, it's the time that it takes too. Changing our expectations to recognize that, hey, you know, if I want a new life and a new start, that start can be as easy as taking charge of my life and making it happen. And that could be considered the new start technically. But the goal itself is going to take a lot of time. And our expectations do screw us up a lot in this case, I think, where they make us sort of, you know, feel overwhelmed or feel like it's not going to happen. And I think that's the other side of that struggle, right? You might figure out what you want, but then you got to get through it and keep at it and keep working on it.
Yeah, I really like what you say there with the work that you have to put into it. Because they talk about that the only place where success comes before work is in the dictionary. And so, like, everything else you have to work towards. But also, I really like the Taoist principles of, like, yin and yang, dark and light. Because I always think that you have to pay for the goodness in advance. Like, the darkest moments in my life, I always know that they're going to lead to these really bright moments, but I have to pay for that darkness up first. It's like putting in the work first to have that success. I know whatever struggle I'm going through, when I get to the other side of that, there's going to be something equally as bright. But I need to get through it. I need to endure through it. And that's something we talk about all the time with these Stoic principles of endurance. Being able to just sit there and endure it. Being patient, being able to sit in discomfort. And
the fact is, too, if you're able to sit through it, if you're able to endure it, you take that with you moving forward. You take that strength that you gain. And I think that is critical, right? It's the idea that, you know, as we work through these struggles and difficulties, and they suck sometimes, and you deal with the day-to-day routine and getting the little steps forward, you do carry that ethic with you, you carry that habit with you, and you develop all these things that make the next step or next phase of your life all that better because it's easier. Essentially, you know, you get through I like how you said it, right? It's almost like, it's like a trial or something. Like, you get through the test of it first, and all of that comes with you, and the things after are easier. And I think we forget that so often, that it does get easier. The more we work at something, the more we work towards something, the more we cultivate the life that we actually want, I think it does get easier because things get better. We are happier. We're finding out that we can do things on our own. We're realizing our agency. We're realizing our capacity for change. I mean, I think, you know, we often forget we are human beings. I mean, our life is changing, right? It's process. It's a process, the whole thing. You can either choose to be in it and to change and to go with it and to make yourself into something, or you can choose not to do it and blame and deal with what you have, I guess.
Yeah, you said it right there, how, like, every time you start over, you're not where you started from before. You're a different person. You're in a different place. You can handle this better. Because so many times we think that life is just a circle where there's, like, good and bad, and we just go through that. But it's not. It's actually like an upward spiral. So we still have to go through the good and bad, but every time we encounter it, we have more skills. We have more agency. We're able to handle it, and we have more resources. And so that every time it becomes easier, and every time it becomes more to our advantage to actually go through it because we can learn from it, we can grow from it. And so, you know, having new beginnings, like, a lot of people may have new beginnings because they've lost everything. Like, maybe they went through a tragedy and it just completely disrupted their whole entire life, and now they have to start over and they feel like they're starting from nothing.
And sometimes that can be good, though, in a way, because it forces you to take those changes that you should have taken a long time ago, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, too, because, you know, I think it is, excuse me, it is going to be hard, for sure. But, you know, once we do work at it, it does get easier. And I think life gets better, though. I think that's the important thing to keep in mind, is it really does get better over time. And, you know, it's funny, like, you know, you were just saying, too, like, you know, we take our past with us, all those things that we have. And I can remember, too, being young, you know, in college and stuff, and even getting out of college, I had all these expectations on myself that others had placed on me. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized none of that shit matters. And, you know, it's funny, though, but no, I mean, it's honest, though, right? Because when you get to that point, once I realized that, things change, because, you know, you realize that why am I doing this for other people? It's my life. And I think, you know, those kinds of realizations, they carry with you, and that makes things better. It makes it easier.
Yeah, that's such a good point to get to, because it's like, and the people still try to impose their will on your life, but you get to a point eventually where it's like, hey, guess what? This is my life. Yeah. You do whatever the hell you want with yours. This is mine. And it's such a liberating point, because you can actually see it, and you can see how they've been trying to manipulate you your whole entire life for you know, maybe to fulfill their dreams or whatever it was, so that they can feel better. Or maybe they're doing it because they think it's what's best for you. But eventually you get to this point where you get to see, hey, you know what? I get to live my life how I want. And
that's all that matters.
Yeah, continue to have your opinion. Thanks for your opinion. Yeah. I'll still go my own way.
Thanks for your opinion. I appreciate it, but I'm going my own way. Yeah. You know, it's funny, too, because, like, that I know those burdens weigh on people a lot. And especially when you're young, it makes sense, right? I mean, you know, you only have the perspective that you have from your parents, your community. And it makes sense, too, for your parents to either want the best for you or even to live vicariously through you. That's also understandable. But, you know, at some point you have to break away from that. And I think once you do, that's where new beginnings really start.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, starting over happens because you're actually starting to live. I mean, I guess what we mean is you're living your own life, right? You're starting to live the life for you, not for anyone else. You're starting to make decisions for you. We've talked about this before, but learning to say no to things, learning to say, you know, no to what's not right for me, or no to obligations others are trying to impose on me that are really like a waste of my time or not necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a shame that parents do that, but I guess they want what's best for their kids. Like, there's one person that I work with, and her son is a really good Fortnite player. Like, he's amazing at it, and he wants to stream, but she won't let him. She just says, no, you need to do your schoolwork. He's not doing great at school. He's got like C's and D's in school. Not doing great at school. She's like, no, you need to do your schoolwork. You can't play Fortnite until you do that. And I said to her, I was like, but he could be the next PewDiePie.
Yeah.
And she's like, who's that? I was like, this guy has a bigger audience than every news station out there.
Yeah.
Like, he's the biggest influencer in the world because he was good at playing video games. And she's like, well, he needs to go to school and he needs to do well in school. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, it's funny though, right? That's the, you know, and it's understandable on one hand because it's like, you get it in a sense like parents want their kids to be able to live in the world. And there is this belief that it's necessary, right? And they're afraid.
Well, because 100 years ago, if you went to school, you would have a very successful career. But now going to school is not necessarily an indicator of success. As a matter of fact, some of the most successful people in America dropped out of school.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny though, it's not necessarily an indicator of success. It's definitely not the same as it was. And you know, it's funny, you talk to, like, even when I talk to my father and stuff, I see it. His idea of what school and degrees mean, I was trying to explain to him the other day. I was like, they don't matter anymore. Not like that, because it's gotten, so many people go, the value has decreased so dramatically. I mean, you look at numbers. I think it was just recently I looked at the numbers, and 70% of kids from high school go directly to college. Before, that number was like 12%. And it's like, so yeah, if you were in the, you know, 1/10 of the society that went to school, yeah, you had a lot of options. That degree mattered. But now, unfortunately, it's like you're competing with so many people, and that means in the marketplace, it's devalued dramatically. So it really doesn't matter the same way that it did, and there's other options to explore, and maybe we'll get to that point one day where parents see that. But, you know, I can also understand their fear, right, of like, well, if it doesn't work out or whatever, but hey, it's worth a shot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on something that we were talking about earlier, where we were talking about people who have maybe lost everything and they're starting all over, and they feel like maybe their life is over or something like that. And there's this old Zen poem about a Zen master who his house was robbed, and they took everything. You know, his whole life's work, they took everything. He was robbed. And he gets home and he looks out the window and he sees the moon, and he's like, they forgot this. and that's the thing, like, even if you've lost everything, even if your business has failed, even if your relationship, you've gotten divorce after divorce after divorce, guess what? It's not over. You still have life. As long as you're still breathing, you still have the gift, and it's still within you. And it's difficult, yes, but every day that you wake up is a new opportunity to move forward.
I really like that too, because it's, you know, it makes a good point too, that we get so focused on the crap that we have, on the stuff that we think defines us or says something to the world, like our possessions, you know, the type of house we live in, the type of car, all this crap that we think says something about how successful we are, how great we're doing. It says nothing about how happy we really are. And it only means it only means as much as we put meaning into it, right? And the fact is, as long as we have life, we have the opportunity to start over, to do new things, to try new things. And it's not over until it's over, essentially. I mean, that's the important point. Yeah. And I think we've all been there, right? Where you get in that mode where your mood sucks, you're negative, you're pessimistic, you're hopeless, you think nothing could possibly change me better, or that any change would be so hard that, you know, I'll never do it. That kind of thinking is really, you know, obviously, it can be soul crushing, essentially. But once you start making steps forward, I think you get out of that way of thinking very quickly, because, you know, we're also living beings. We want to live. We want to create. That's part of who we are, right? I mean, you know, once you start realizing that, things get better. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good way to look at it, though. I like that.
Yeah. And there's, I really like reading stuff by Naval Ravikant and listening to him, because I feel like he's a lot further along the path than I am, but I like the direction that his life has taken, and so I model a lot of things that I do after him. And so he talks about When you're finally wealthy, you'll realize it's not what you were seeking in the first place. He says, seek a calm mind, a fit body, and a house full of love. And I think a lot of us get caught up seeking wealth.
I think everybody gets caught up seeking, especially in this country. It's hard not to, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, we're not even taught the basic principles of wealth. No. Like the basic principles of wealth. Like, simplest one, earn more than you spend less than you earn. Like, that one thing.
Yeah.
That one thing. That and investing in assets will guarantee you will be rich.
You know it's funny too, like school being outdated, that is one, I mean, they teach you nothing practical. In public school or college, like, they should be teaching kids finances. Everyone should take finances in public school. They should all take courses on, how to critically think. I mean, we don't get any of this, and it really does. I think it hinders people significantly because they don't understand the world they live in, the society they live in.
Yeah, well, I think it was like Mark Twain or somebody like that said, I never let my schooling interfere with my education. Yeah. Because, like, it literally is. Like, you have to educate yourself. There's this whole genre of personal development, self-help, but it's like, the only type of help there is self-help.
Yeah.
Like, other people can't help you. They can try, they can point you in the direction, but really, it all comes down to helping yourself. And, like, school is trying to point you in a direction, a very outdated direction, but really, you have to take it upon yourself to educate yourself.
Well, the fact is, too, it doesn't matter what you do, and in school it's true, too, right? You get what you put in, and if you put in a lot, and you are a self-learner, if you're able to teach yourself, you can get a lot out of it. But I think the problem is people are taught not to teach themselves. They're taught to rely on these authority figures. They're taught to rely on, educators, and they feel like without that, they're unable to actually do anything. And this is also a big point of starting over in new beginnings, right? Is learning that you can teach yourself, learning that you can learn the skills you need to actually do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. It's part of being a human being, right? We're able to educate ourselves. We just have to have the attitude that we can do it.
Yeah. Having the faith. I just listened to this interview with Wim Hof on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and Tim Ferriss asked him if you could tell everybody one thing, like if you could tell your 30-year-old self one thing, what would it be? And he said, have faith.
Yeah.
Have faith in yourself. Have faith that your dreams will come to fruition. And that stuck with me because it's really a simple thing. Like, we talk about the difference between fear and faith. They're both illusions. They don't exist, but one believes in the positive and one believes in the negative. And it's just like, have faith. Like, it doesn't matter. Whatever you believe will come to fruition. So, like, why not choose the positive one? Why not believe that the positive will actually happen? Why not believe that you can achieve your dreams?
Well, and that's just it, right? Because if you believe it, we talked about this before, we're world creators. If we believe it, we will create the world where that is possible. We'll interpret the world in a way that it works for us rather than against us. If we don't believe it, we'll interpret the world in a way where it's against us, right? And it won't work out. But I really like that too, because it's the truth. When you have faith in yourself, when you know that you can do it, it will happen. And I mean, the worst times in my life were when I lost faith in myself, were when I believed I couldn't do something, because when I look back on it, it's like I wasted time, but I'm not, and that's fine, it's in the past. And I'm glad that I did that, because I realized I should never do that again, because it's a dead end. Mm-hmm. It's basically, it's basically giving up. When you lose faith in yourself, you've given up. That you can't start over, that you can't have a new beginning, that you can't be the self you want to be. And I think we all can, but like we said too, and going back to the point about money, we focus on it because I think it's every point of success that we are shown in this country, in the United States, is all tied to wealth. It's all tied to income. We never talk about the person's happiness. We never talk about their quality of life in other aspects. We never talk about what they value. We never talk about all these other things that matter. And I think, that's important too. If you're talking about starting over and creating a life, it's important to know what you want. Because frankly, a lot of money might look nice from afar, but you might not actually want those things. Like, you might not want a 90-hour work week. You might value your family a lot, or value other things that really you don't need that. You just need to be secure financially, not ultra wealthy. You might not want there's so many things to consider when you talk about life. I think one of the interesting things that, Mill, I think, said that, each individual is the only person that can really evaluate the quality of their own life. Because the quality of your own life is subjective. It depends on your own values. It depends on your own wishes, wants, hopes, so forth and so on, right? And so I'm the only person that can say whether my life is good or not. I mean, easy example is that, you know, if you think of like, imagine two people that are like have a terminal illness and they're, you know, they're on like their deathbed, and, you know, they could either, you know, if they wanted active euthanasia, they could get it. So they could, you know, get the mercy killing, or they could continue to live. And, you know, I talk about this with my students and say, well, imagine one of them just had their first grandchild, right? That might be enough to deal with the pain because they want to experience that new life. Whereas if the other one doesn't have that, it might not matter, right? And that's their own decision. That's the point. And I think that matters a lot, is understanding what you want, because those values will make a huge difference.
Definitely. So for people who are starting over, regardless of if they have baggage or if they've lost everything or if they're just not satisfied with life, like what are some helpful things that they can do to start over? What are some habits that they could instill? What are some ways that they could figure out how to start over?
Well, I like that. Yeah. Well, you had mentioned this earlier, and I want to reiterate, writing down what you want. And I think this is important. I know it might seem crazy to do very early on, but I started doing this a while ago, and it's helpful. Every morning, write 5 things you want. And I try to do like 2 short term and 3 long term. And every morning I do it. And the reason why I do it every morning is I have my old ones, but the new ones might change a little bit because of different developments, different things. And so that way it keeps you focused. Like we said, you're 40% more likely to achieve it if you write it down. But it also helps you kind of like, by writing it down, you're thinking about it and you're reflecting on it. And it helps you sort of start giving yourself some direction. It really helped me actually figure out kind of the direction I want to go, at least have an idea of how I want to, you know, proceed forward. So I think doing that is like probably one of the most helpful things you can possibly do, right?
Definitely. Yeah, I second that with writing down goals. And I also started writing down the date that I want to achieve them by.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like I will do X by October 2021 or whatever. Because that gives my mind a very clear indication of when it needs to get done, but also when I want it to get it done.
You know what I like about that too? I think, you know, and you might obviously, you know,
you can always move the date later.
Yeah, you can always move the date. Keep that in mind. It's not set in stone. It's your own date. But I also like that too, because by putting the date out in the future, you know it will take time. You know it's not immediate. Because I think that's what kills so many of us. We're like, you know, I really want to learn this new skill, or I really want to, you know, write a book, or I really want to become like a Python programmer. And then you get frustrated when you're not excellent at it the next day. And it's like, well, no, it's going to take time. You got to learn all the basics. You got to learn all this stuff and how to think about it and how to...
There can also be another side to it, because I've been doing this for a while, and my top thing was I will be happily... I always write them in present tense, so I am happily living in Thailand by October 2021. And then the opportunity came to be there by April, and I wasn't ready for it because it happened like sooner than I expected. But the thing is, by like putting it there in the present tense with a date and being grateful that it's already happened.
Yeah, that's great.
A huge key. Like that gets things done so much more quickly than anything else, that if you're actually grateful that they already happened. Because literally, once you write something down, it's almost guaranteed to happen. If you work towards it, it's almost guaranteed. So why not just be happy that it's already happened? Be grateful that it's already happened.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. People forget this, that, you know, we really can do almost anything. Learn anything. I mean, it's unlimited. So just try it. Write it down and do it. I think it's probably one of the best things you can possibly do. And like we said, for figuring things out, but also the idea of a date is really a good idea, because it gives you a future-looking kind of direction, right? That this is the idea of myself later, and I'm going to get that. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah,
I like that one.
Yeah, and then kind of like brainstorming, like what would I do if success were guaranteed, or if failure were impossible, or if everyone got paid the same exact amount of money.
Like thought experiments to figure out what you want, to kind of imagine the life that you want, to help yourself figure out what is the beginning, what is the new life that I'm working towards.
Right, because so often we have these blinders. We talked about the baggage, we talked about the habits that we have, we talked about the limiting beliefs and the overwhelm from too much opportunity, but actually looking at it, like, if I was guaranteed to succeed, and so whatever I choose, my life will become that, what life would I then want to have?
Yeah, you know, that's so important too, because understanding that is central to living a good life and a happy life. It's knowing what you want so you can develop the right skills, so you can live that way. And, you know, it's important to know, it might not be right away that you figure this out. But at least trying these things out will get you in the right direction and thinking in the right way. Because when you're positive that it will happen, it's also that cultivating that positivity, that faith in oneself, that confidence that you can get it done is essential too, I think, for making these things happen. Because there will be roadblocks, there will be, struggles, there will be obstacles. But if you know it will happen, you will overcome them, I think. It does work really well in that sense.
Yeah. And then I would also say be active.
Yeah.
So so many times when I've been limited in terms of what I could see, when I felt the darkest times, I was just sitting inside with the window, with the blinds closed. And you get so stuck in your own patterns and your own thought process. So be active. And the simplest thing you can do is just go for a walk.
Oh my God.
And especially get out into community. Go for a walk somewhere where you'll see other people so you can remember that life is a constant process of relating. And you don't need to talk with them. You don't need to smile at them. If you feel shitty, feel shitty.
Yeah.
But just look at other people and be angry at them for being happy. And let that stuff process through you. But get out there and do it, because that activity, that walking, that contemplation you do while you're walking, this seeing other people, it'll remind you that you're just part of this big organism that we're all part of.
Yeah, and it's that shift in perspective that really helps, because the fact is, those blinders are self-imposed, but they're also hard to really break off sometimes, because when you're used to seeing the world a certain way, that same interpretation keeps coming back, right? It'll keep resurfacing even if you're trying to break through. So changing your perspective, doing something different, getting out, not staying inside, not letting yourself get in that mood where you don't want anything to change. Because change is also something you have to want, right? A new beginning is something you have to want, and once you want it, it will work out, I think. That's the side that really matters, And we talk about habits a lot. I think that's another side of this too, of being active, developing the right routines is also about habit. If you're trying to figure out the life that you want, if you're trying to start over, try changing your habits. They don't have to be big changes. They could be writing in a journal every morning. Give yourself 10 minutes. Set aside that 10 minutes for yourself. Because the fact is, it has to be something you choose. It has to be what you want. And that starts with starting to make decisions for you, not for others, not for the world, not blaming, taking responsibility and saying, every morning I'm going to get up 10 minutes early, I'm going to write in the journal, and I'm going to just self-reflect.
That's a crucial key, and I'm glad you mentioned that, is taking action every day.
Yeah.
Even if it's a minute, even if it's 5 minutes, because it may seem small. It may seem like I'll never get what I want by just doing a minute a day, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because that little step is going to move over time. Even if you just do a minute a day, guess what? Over a year, that's over 6 hours further than you were had you not have done that minute a day. And so by taking that step every single day, it gets you in the right direction, and it gets you thinking about it. It gets you working towards it. So that's such a critical thing.
I think it is, because it's keeping your mind focused on it. And sometimes you have to bring your mind back. We talked about this before, but the small delights, that little exercise of writing down a couple small delights each day to help yourself focus on the positive rather than the negative, on the small pleasures. I still do that, and I love it, because even when I have a bad day, I always write them down at night. And when I sit down at night to write one down, I always find one. And then my mood always changes, because I remember, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I've been doing this for this long. And it's like, my mood always comes back to positivity. It's really interesting, but it works so well. And a lot of it is actually the repetition, the habit. It helps us shift our attention and our focus to what's better rather than worse. And the more we do that, the less the negativity, the hopelessness burdens us. Because really, I think meaning a lot of times, I've been reading The Existentialists again a lot, and meaning a lot of times is just setting that meaning ourselves. It's having a goal, having an idea of who we want to be and working towards it, and that gives our life meaning. It really does. And I think, that process of working out what we value, the process of working out what we want, it is in itself meaningful. It is in itself worthwhile, because life is that process. It never stops. Getting something is not going to make you happy. It's not an end to be achieved. It's a thing that you live. It is living life that makes you happy, not some, imagined end or product or whatever, right? And I think that's crucial to keep in mind, because it helps us keep focused on the activity each day.
Yeah, it's such a good point you made there, that it's living life. Because if you think back to times when you were happiest, you weren't thinking, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. But when you think back to the times when you're most miserable, you were thinking, I'm miserable, I'm miserable, I'm miserable. So it's actually the living life that gives us our happiest moments in life.
It really does. I mean, the worst times in life are always when we're sitting around doing nothing, miserable, and blaming the world and pretending we're a victim.
And usually thinking.
Yeah.
Like, happiness happens without thinking. Yeah.
It really does, right? And a meaningful life is there, I think, in that process. I think that's crucial.
Yeah.
So we have habits, right? Writing things down, being active. I think those are all crucial, right?
Well, the active part is so crucial.
Yeah.
Because there's been this this idea ever since the movie The Secret came out that you can just visualize whatever you want and somehow magically it'll manifest.
Materialize in the world, yeah.
But the thing is, they butchered the idea behind The Secret. It's actually visualizing it, but that's one half. The second half is taking daily action in the direction of whatever you're visualizing.
Yeah, it's imagining a life and working towards it. It's imagining something and working towards it. It's not just imagining it, because that doesn't make anything happen. We talked about this before, right? It's like having ideas but never taking action. You really don't have anything. You can't say you had a good idea because you didn't do anything with it.
Right, and happiness and success are the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Yeah. So you need to figure out what that ideal is, what that vision is, and then you need to progressively realize it. The pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, the pursuit, literally, the pursuit of happiness.
Like, it's kind of funny because it's like not a balanced equation. Because happiness is equal to the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, it's not an equal equation, but it works somehow. Because when you're pursuing happiness, that's when you're happy.
Because your life has meaning, because you're doing something. And I think that's part of it. We're living life, we need to be active. It's like without that activity, we're not alive in some significant way. We're just existing, and there's a difference. I think there is a difference between being alive and existing. And you don't want to just simply exist. You want to be alive. You want to be active in the world, and you want to make things happen.
Well, because in the end, you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
That's guaranteed.
Yeah.
That's 100% guaranteed. In 100 years or less, you are going to be dead. So in this briefest blink that you have here in existence on the universe, what are you going to do with it?
I'm glad you brought that up too, because the inevitability of death is important, because I think once you accept that, you also realize that what you do is up to you and you're free to do it. Because really, at the end of the day, we're all going to die, so who cares? Do whatever you want, because you might as well take advantage of the time that you have now while you have it. I think there's nothing, that is probably one of the best things to think about, is that, why am I sitting here wasting time? I will die. I should be doing something that I want to do, because this is my only chance to do it. I should experience new things. I should be open to new possibilities, because what else is there to do? Yeah. That's life.
Yeah, it's like a very stoic thing to do to regularly contemplate your own mortality. And I find myself doing that more and more often, as I'm getting older. Because I'm 37 now, so, statistically, I'm at least a third of the way done my life, maybe even halfway done. And so, like, the inevitability of death gives my life more meaning, but also it gives it more intensity, because I know that it's slipping away. I'm running out of it.
Well, I think that's it too, right? It's a great motivator, and it's a great way just to remind yourself, like, look, this is limited. Because we have that tendency, especially when we're young, but I think most of us have this tendency a lot of times to kind of imagine our life as being unlimited, or that we have all this time. And when you put it really in context and realize that you don't have all this time, you're more motivated to do something and to make something happen, because it really doesn't, you don't have to worry about all the other BS, right? It's just, that this is the time you have, do it. Try it.
Let me ask, if you knew the exact day you were going to die, do you think that would give you more of a motivation to live a life, or less of a motivation?
I think it would probably be more, right? Because you would know that it definitely ends now. You can't imagine that there's going to be more time, right? You know the date that it ends. Whereas when you don't know, because we all don't know, it could be very short or it could be very long. We don't, and that's the problem. We tend to favor the longevity.
So that's kind of a thought experiment that I just thought of here while we're talking, is actually find out the life expectancy for someone living in your country.
There you go.
And then, so like in the US, I think it's like 76 years or something for a male. So then from your birth date, find 76 years, plot that date, be like, statistically, I'm going to be dead by that date.
This is the time I have. What am I doing with it?
What am I going to do in these next 40 years?
I like that. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, because really, it makes it more meaningful just by making it more intense. There's more pressure, yes, but I think it's a good positive pressure because it's a pressure of action. It's a pressure of I need to do something with this time rather than wasting it. Because we are also prone to kind of laziness, wasting time, sitting around. And it's like then we get mad at ourselves for not doing anything, but like we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So do something, take action. I think that's, action really is the most important thing that you can possibly focus on is doing something.
Yeah. Being impatient with action and patient with results.
Yeah, that is, it's probably one of the best ways to think of it, I think. It is.
Yeah. So, I think I'm very satisfied with what we've talked about with new beginnings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every time today you said a new start, I was thinking of Arrested Development, Tobias's license plate. I kept giggling the whole time.
A new start. Yeah. It's true, and I think it's definitely doable though. We can all start over whenever we want. We can always start living the life we want. That's what matters. Just take action.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Danny, it's been an absolute pleasure today talking about this. I can't wait to listen to it. I've been doing that every week, listening to our chats.
Same here. I love it. Yeah, it always helps.
If you guys did enjoy this, make sure to share it with friends and family. Also subscribe. That helps us out so much. And also join us midweek for the short, quick fix episode where this week we'll be going over...
we will be going over... Hang on. Hold on. I know. Thinking big.
Thinking big. Yeah, the magic of thinking big, even.
Ooh.
I read that book on a regular basis, so we'll have plenty to talk about. See you guys next time. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one, Danny.
Later, Andy.
Cool.
Awesome.